Yo, 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 we are back again. You know who it is. It's your boy Dayvito, and on my right, his light shines bright. It's Jerome Colbert.
What's up, people? We are back again for an additional session of Love Thy Enemies. And this week we're going to talk about, when does an enemy stop being an enemy?
What a great question, Jerome. I'm so glad you asked, man. Now, just to recap a little bit, if you remember last week we talked about what is the purpose of an enemy. And just like my man Jerome said, this week, when does an enemy stop being an enemy? I think that's an interesting question, man. You asked, why don't you answer it first?
Man, I hope I don't get persecuted for this one. But I'm going to go against the grain a little bit on this one. For me, personally, an enemy never starts being an enemy. So I don't have a stopping point.
Oh, come on, man. Bro, you got to peel that onion back a little bit more, man. Come on.
I mean, I hit on it earlier. Loving people. And if I'm loving my enemies, I don't see them as an enemy. And we talked about it last episode, last part. You have to be Christ-like, be God-like. And for me, it's centered around loving people and loving God. And I don't let other enemies, quote unquote, define my actions, so I don't view them as an enemy.
Bro, that is so clutch, man. I'm telling you, somebody's mind just got blown right now, bro, because when I was asking myself this question, I literally had pictures of the people that I have called enemies at one point in time.
And I think that's why it stuck out to me, because I didn't picture anybody when we started discussing this topic and how we were going to ask different questions, and that was one of the questions for me. I couldn't visualize the enemy, so I thought to myself, like, there is no enemies. I don't see enemies.
Man, see, that it's just so fitting that your light shines bright, man. That intro was not by mistake.
You're right.
Man, so, well, I feel like my answer ain't gonna be as good as that one, man, but hey, let me take a crack at it right here, man. For me, you know, when I think about when an enemy stops being an enemy, how many times have you gotten into a fight, right? And this happens a lot with guys, right? You get into a fight with that dude, man, that boy been talking mess about you, man, over there spreading rumors about you in school, and probably took your girlfriend, whatever the case might be, right? And you get into a fight with this person. Bro, I literally think about this one homeboy of mine. He's actually a homeboy of mine. Like, we actually support each other. Till this day, we actually support each other.
Yeah, I see your energy change now.
It did, man. It did, man. But it's funny because back in the day, I think it was like, I don't know, maybe 7th or 8th grade, man, we actually fist fought. Like, we actually fist fought. And I still don't know what his problem was with me. The whole reason why I fist fought him was because I was like, man, you can't just be talking about me like that, man. Like, I gotta stand my ground, you know what I'm saying? I gotta show you what these fists can do, you know what I'm saying? So we ended up, you know, banging it out real early on, man. But then we ended up being good friends afterwards, you know. And so I've always thought to myself, well, dang, when did that turning point happen? And obviously, I'm not in the 8th grade, right? I'm not 13, 14 years old anymore. I've had a little bit of life experience, you know what I'm saying? So I've gone through a lot more things and more in-depth problems and stuff like that. And so I think for me, the first step to an enemy not becoming an enemy or not being an enemy anymore, at least in my eyes, is when I finally let go and let God. Now, super cliche, I understand. This thing been aired out, used, in every kind of quote, and I can think of the bracelets, I can think of plaques, I can think of all these times when people have said, oh, you just gotta let go and let God. But what I mean by letting go is you gotta let go of the resentment. You gotta let go of the anger, and you gotta let go of the offense. Most people develop enemies because they're offended by somebody's actions or somebody's words or somebody's behavior in a particular situation. And man, I was going through a class one time and somebody said, yo, sometimes we have relationships with people, or at least we think we have relationships with people, but what we really have is we have a relationship with the offense to that person. Some people are in a relationship with offenses that have occurred years and years and years and years and years ago, and every time you think about this person, you literally feel the same way you felt on day one when that person was dubbed an enemy in your mind. And when I mean let go, I'm not talking about let go of the memory, so to speak. You got to remember that, but you got to let go of the feeling and the attachment and the anger that it still brings up whenever you think about that person, whenever you think about that situation. And you really have to let God do what only He can do. and that's transformed that person.
That's so powerful to say too, and it's so hard for a lot of people to grasp that concept of letting go. And it really comes back to like your character as a person and the people that you're around to really allow you to express yourself differently and to see that person in a different light. Or if you're really addressing that problem, that oppression that you've had with that person, to open yourself up to be a better person and to see them in a different viewpoint.
Yep. You know, for me, for many years, because of the abuse that my dad put me through, anytime that I would think about my dad, I would get angry, instantly angry, and not like a little bit angry. I'm talking about like furious, like enraged, you know what I'm saying? Because any memory or any trigger that would remind me of my dad, it would bring me back to that state of mind, and my whole mood, my whole demeanor, my whole being, my whole behavior, everything, my vocabulary, everything would change. And it's just because I was still in the relationship with the offense, the resentment, the anger. I was still in a relationship with it. I hadn't let it go yet. And so I think that the best way, or at least one of the first steps, again, to me, is when you have those types of relationships or when you feel like you've had enemies, I think the very first step of being able to make an enemy no longer an enemy is to let go and let God.
Yeah.
So.
And just to piggyback off of your testimony about your dad, I had the same situation when I didn't have a real strong relationship with my dad. But again, like when I was really like studying for this episode, I thought to those moments, and it was never a point in my life where I was angry. And a lot of people always ask me, even my wife asked me till today, she always says like, why are you so even keel? Why do you never get so high? Why do you never get so low? And I think I've always just been centered, and I think it comes from my mom, a love for people. So when I had those feelings about my dad, I let go, like real easy. And still to this day, like some of my siblings, they have difficulty with the reason how I let go and how did I let go. Mm-hmm. And man, it's we talked about it earlier, just like creating an understanding of the process and wanting your capabilities in how you see people differently change. And for me, that started very early, and since then I've been able to just really go with people, go and see people in a light of love. Man, which is kind of not hard to do, but it's, you know, what God wants us to do.
It's certainly easier said than done.
Yeah.
Certainly easier said than done. You know,
Right.
I think about the turning point. You know, at what point was I ready to let go?
A defining moment.
Yeah. What point? What was it? And it wasn't like a particular action. And I don't remember my dad saying sorry. You know what I'm saying? I don't remember him like, you know, this remarkable moment where tears were in his eyes and, you know, he was ugly crying and snot was coming out of his face. You know, like I don't have that moment.
Right.
For me, I think that I had to just get to the root. I had to really be honest with myself. I had to really ask myself some hard questions. I had to really think of what was my why? Why was I holding on to this? Because what I realized was that relationship with that offense that I was having, it was bleeding through in every other relationship that I was having, who was nothing like my father, who never did anything or put me through any of the things that my dad had put me through. It was a completely different night and day type of experience, and yet my triggers and my reactions and my approaches were still the same. And so I had to get to the root of it, right? I had to figure out why. Why was I feeling this way? What was it that, you know, was triggering me? And more importantly, what was the teaching moment? You know, we always, in our church, we ask the purpose question, right? How's that, or the effective question, excuse me.
How's that working?
At my church, we ask the effective question. How's that working for you? For me, I had to take a little step further, and I had to develop what I call the purpose question. And that purpose question is, what is God trying to show me through this? Because once you realize that this is for you, this happened to me, yes, it happened to me, but it's for me. It's to develop me, it's to push me, it's to elevate me. Then what is God trying to teach me in this situation, and how can I grow from this? How can I use what has happened to me and make myself better so that everyone around me never has to be subjected to that type of pain or to that type of experience? And how can I improve on this moving forward so that I never have to inflict or make anyone in this world feel the way that he made me feel? And that was really difficult to do.
Right. And that's so key for you saying that. how is that for you? It changes a lot of behaviors that you continue to have in your life, because we all know that there's peaks and there's valleys in life in general. So you're going to have those moments where you're going through a scenario, you're going through a struggle, and you don't know what's on the other side. But if you're thinking through the process and you're letting God work inside of you, you know there's something for you on the other side. And that's faith. That's love.
Yeah.
That's just being God-like and knowing that, all right, something's going to happen. My reaction is going to be different because I know how I've reacted before and it wasn't good for me. So now I want it to be better. Yeah. So my reaction has to be better.
Yeah. I'm curious to know in the, our watchers, our subscribers, our audience, what were those moments like for you? Because I've heard stories of women who were raped, like my mother, sexually abused, physically abused. I've heard of men who, have been through so much, right? I even think about our brothers who are in prison right now, incarcerated right now, falsely, right? Like in prison wrongfully, right? We hear these things all the time where somebody gets exonerated after serving 20-some years. Your whole life's been taken from you, right? Like maybe my pain isn't as severe as that pain.
Right.
Maybe my experiences aren't as deep as your experiences, but nonetheless, there's a takeaway from this. There's something that not only can you guys learn from us and our experiences, but there's something that we can learn from you guys and your experiences. And so I'm just curious, man, if you guys would just drop,
drop some qualifying questions in the boxes below. I don't know if there's going to be 1 box, 2 boxes, 3 boxes, but just like we're having these conversations, we're talking about our experiences and helping us grow together and hopefully helping you guys grow. Those questions that you have will help somebody else. So that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
We're unpeeling this thing one step at a time and learning about each other better, learning about you guys better, and doing God's work, man.
Yes, sir.
And I love it. It's
Yes,
a beautiful
sir.
feeling.
Now listen, we don't have all the answers, right? I can tell you right now, man, I ain't got no certificate hanging up on my wall with any type of behavioral sciences or anything else like that. I'm certainly not a theological scholar by any means of the sorts. But listen, man, I've gone through life, you know what I'm saying? I've been through some ups and I've been through some downs, right? I know that we've experienced things differently. Our past may be different, but we found purpose on the same journey, you know what I'm saying? And life is really all about a journey. For me, to kind of wrap this thing up here.
Man, if y'all need somebody to connect with us, we can help you guys out.
Yeah.
We can do life together, walk together, talk together. That's what we're doing now.
Look, you're not alone, man. And look, if you're a Twitter thug, hey, you can be a Twitter thug, man. Come holler at us.
We love you too.
We still love you too, man. But look, for people who aren't Twitter thugs, for people who are literally like, man, I really don't have anybody that I can talk to about this. Like, hey, I can't go to a therapist. Hey, I can't talk to my family. I can't talk to my friends about this. I can't talk to my parents about this. Yo, talk to us about it, man. At the end of the day, you are not alone. And we are here to service the people. Now, to wrap this thing up, one of the things that I feel was this was huge for me. It was at this moment in my life when I realized that I had the power to choose and I had the power to change the dynamic of the things that had happened to me. And it was from one simple thing. Simple doesn't always equal easy, but it was this one simple thing. I simply chose to be a problem solver. There were a lot of problem makers in my life. Problem makers that I never thought were going to be problem makers. And a lot of times we make our own problems. We make problems for ourselves and we just don't want to be held accountable. But that's another episode. That's a whole nother podcast right there. But for me, when I decided that through everything I was going to search for a resolution to it, that I would find a means to an end, so to speak, that the chapter wasn't just going to keep telling itself, that eventually the chapter would end and I would move on to another chapter in my life, was the day that I decided that I was going to be a problem solver and not a problem maker. And those are something that I preach to my kids. It's something that I talk to anybody that's ever talked to me. I'm always searching for a resolution, even in other people's problems, man. And look, I'm not Mr. Fix-It. I can't fix everybody's problems. Some people just can't be fixed, right? Some issues can't be fixed by outside influences. Some issues can only be fixed by you. But for me, I decided to be intentional about becoming a problem solver, searching for a resolution in things, changing my approach, and being the first to ask for forgiveness. See, pride will prevent you from actually being first to ask for forgiveness. Oh, I ain't gonna do that until she says she's sorry, or you know what, I ain't talking to that person until that person acknowledges what they've done to me. Man, listen, you're just gonna keep having problems.
So
Problems don't fix themselves.
I got one quick question for you, and maybe it'll help somebody that's watching. So when did that pendulum switch for you? Because what happens in life, right? A lot of people live by default. We talk about this all the time, but you actually design your reactions, design how you want your life to go and flow.
Yeah.
And those reactions to the so-called enemies in your life, those reactions change because you started designing your life differently.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've always thought about what is the point of Christianity, right? What's the point of, following the way, right? If you call yourself a follower of Jesus, what's the end goal? Is it to go to heaven, right? For some of us it is. For me, I realized that Jesus didn't have any enemies, but he was an enemy to a lot of people.
There you go.
So that was kind of like the turning point for me when I realized, man, he never called people his enemies, but they called him the enemy. And so I realized then that not everybody's going to understand me. Not everybody's going to agree with me. Not everybody's going to believe what I believe. But if I can find common ground in everybody's relationships, in everybody's experiences, and everybody's, even in people's traumas, right? Like, you got to find common ground in that. I may not have gone through what you've gone through, but I've gone through something that has given me the same feeling or maybe the same thought processes, and I could find that type of common ground. And that's when I knew, like, yo, this didn't happen to me so that I can keep telling the trauma.
Right.
This happened to me so that I can keep telling the triumph behind it and help other people cross that finish line. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, that was it for me. I wanted to find peace in my life, because all this stuff was just a turmoil. It was chaotic. You know what I'm saying? It was always this loud voice of, like, it was almost like it was always screaming at me, these same situations, and I wanted to find peace in that. And I knew that the only way that I could find peace was if I solved the problem and if I found a resolution to that. So.
And I so love that you said that, because we know we're close to being Jesus, right? But we're being Jesus-like. And I said it earlier that for me, I can't think of having an enemy. I don't see enemies. And he just said it, man. It's just walking that journey and finding that gap to where he's thinking differently. He's doing life the way God wants us to do life. And he's treating those enemies, so-called enemies, with love. And that changes it. So.
Well, guys, listen, we love you. We're going to wrap this one up. We are Dead Religion. My name is Dayvito. That's Jerome Colbert. And you don't want to miss next week. This is our last and final week of Love Thy Enemies. And we're going to ask the $1 million question: how do you love your enemies? You don't want to miss it. This is Dead Religion, and we are